against is unconstitutional. Any other order that the court may deem fit in accordance with justice, equity, and good conscience.
The bench is well versed with the facts and jurisdiction of the case. The counsel would like to proceed with the legal issues, which are 3 in number. The counsel, through its argument, will show 3 different factors. A, that the actions of the state in tapping the phone was not arbitrary. B, that the actions of the state to tap Ms. Veera's phone and for the publication of it did not lead to violation of her right to privacy. And C, the actions of the state were definitely not violative of right to livelihood of the respondent in this matter. Now coming to the first legal issue. Now, the first legal issue will be contended under 3 subparts. The first part will be, we will show through our argument that the actions of the state to tap the telephonic conversations was not arbitrary. Now Section 5 subclause 2 of the Indian Telegraph Act 1885 gives the state the right to tap a person's phone in case of emergency and public interest or public order at large. Now in this case, there was one such case provided to the Home Secretariat, which led to the Home Secretariat giving permissions to tap the respondent's phone. Now the Supreme Court in PUCL was of the view that this Section 5 subclause 2 lacked a procedure which was later filled in by the Supreme Court and incorporated in the 2000 amendment as Rule 419A, which clearly states the procedure under which the person of the state can tap another person's phone if required or called upon to do so. Now, these rules have been so well framed that the arbitrary use of power is not possible. This in Dharamveer Khattar versus Union of India, the Delhi High Court was of the same opinion that considering that if all the procedures are followed, then it is not possible for a state to take up an issue arbitrarily and tap someone's phone. Now coming to the second part of tapping the phone for 300 days. Now it will be rightly contended by the respondent that the maximum days a phone can be tapped according to Section Rule 419A of the Indian Telegraph Rules is 180 days. As has been provided by the guidelines subclause 1. Okay. But in PUCL versus Union of India, the Supreme Court was of the view, and I quote the Supreme Court, that minister or his delegates will be competent to issue a fresh order for tapping of the telephone if circumstances call for it. So it is safe to assume that the circumstances were such in this matter, of such gross manner, that the State Home Secretariat was had felt that there was a need to authorize one more phone tapping, which led the state to tap the phone for 300 days. Now, coming to whether the transfer of these information from one department, that is the IT department, to the CBI was arbitrary. No, the CBI does have jurisdiction to try over such matters, and the CBI manual clearly states that if the CBI has jurisdiction over a particular issue, even if the investigation by the department prior to it is not complete, the CBI does have access of every evidence that might arise from it, and hence the transfer of this conversation from one department to another department stands justified. Now turning lights to the second issue, whether tapping of the phone and further publication of it led to the violation of the women's right to privacy. The right to privacy comes under Article 21 as being established in Kharak Singh versus Union of India. Now, in Menka Gandhi, the court was of the view that it should contend with something else. Now, in this case, it can be a breach of right to privacy if there was an arbitrary action of the state. Through issue 1, the council has already established that there was no arbitrary function of the state, and hence the privacy of the woman has not been infringed. Coming to the part of publication. Now, the council would like to throw light on a case of Indian Express versus Union of India, in where the Honorable Supreme Court was of the view that publication of an information in public interest in a democratic society which will affect the public interest at large will not be stopped from doing so. Now the state, as contended by the respondent in the High Court, was not negligent and felt that there was a need, considering the light of events that has been happening in this nation over the last few days, that the state felt that there was a need for publication of such a conversation, and hence, due to public interest at large, did not, under any circumstances, lead to the violation of right to privacy of the woman. Now coming to the third and the final legal issue, which has been contended by the respondent in the Honorable Supreme Court, or Honorable High Court, I beg your pardon, of Saurashtra. She said that in this matter, her right to livelihood has been infringed. Now, before we can go into this, I would like the Honorable bench out here to concentrate on paragraph 2 of the statement of facts provided in the memo, in which it clearly says that she filed a writ fearing a loss of her reputation, which shows that there was something that the conversation had, which might lead to the loss of her reputation. So it is safe to believe that her profession was not actually safe. Now the Supreme Court in M.J. Srinivasan was of the view that right to livelihood cannot be extended to carry on trade or business which is injurious to public interest. So in this case, it was injurious to public interest. Now what she contends is it has been a violation of 19(1)(a), which led to the further violation of right to privacy. But 19(1)(a) is subjected to 19(2), which is a reasonable restriction, and section 5 subclause 2 is the reasonable restriction, and hence her right to livelihood, which might have been corrupt due to the actions of the state, stands justified. Moving towards the prayer, the counsel in this matter seeks that the Honorable and the learned judge of bench of Supreme Court dismisses the order of the High Court and lets the state proceed with the investigation and usage of the estates, because as also established in Al-Mankhani, that any evidence that has been obtained is admissible in court as per section 7 of the Indian Evidence Act, irrespective of how it has been obtained. So it is very important for the sake of the investigation to carry on that the state be allowed to further proceed with the usage of this telephonic conversation. It was an honor arguing in front of the honorable bench. The council would like to answer any question that is very serious.
As per your contention, what you argued is that Miss Veera was really loss of business and reputation. This means there was something, and therefore. So my question is that whether it is necessary that there should be something in the wiretapping for which a person should be having fear of loss of reputation. Her mere fact that there was a wiretapping, whether it will not be dangerous to her reputation.
Absolutely. That is what the council can.
My question is whether there should be some substance in the wiretapping.
It is. Or
mere wiretapping can be dangerous to her reputation.
No, it's not mere wiretapping in this matter, because if the respondent comes out clean in the investigation, it won't harm her reputation. Her reputation is being harmed because her conversations contain certain things or elements which does affect the public order at large, and people then, she might fear the loss of her reputation because she will be further charged with a criminal offence in this case, which would lead to her reputation being lost. Now that she filed the claim stating planning basically that the reputation will be lost, which clearly shows that there was something in the investigation. Now, the Advocate General in this matter has not been briefed by the Home Secretary, but it establishing for the fact that the phones were tapped for 300 days does show that there was something which was grossly violative of public interest, which led to the state tapping her phone, and hence her reputation can be lost through that, and which will further even if it does lead to violation of her livelihood, but it is rightly it is not a violation, but is a reasonable restriction that the state is taking in this.
So as per your contention, the maximum period is 180
180
days. And the wiretapping was continued for
300 days.
So what is the maximum limit, or what are the maximum, for how many numbers the permission can be extended?
Now, the Rule 419A of the Indian Telegraph Act does not specify anything as such, but it says that it is maximum of 180 days. But PUCL, the case of PUCL, the Supreme Court was of the view that the ministers can file for a fresh appeal. So now, considering that the entire procedure cannot be arbitrary in nature, so it is on the discretion of the Home Secretary and the bench who will review the tapes to decide whether the tapping should go on or not. Now, considering that everything has been satisfied, 300 days was required in this case, and that is what makes the state need tapping of phone for some reasons. There's no.
The responsible in the case of state of Saurashtra was misleading. if the honorable bench delivers the facts and jurisdiction